This is Murder in the Morning with Tony Bruschi and Stacey Cole.
It's been a while since the Greenbergs, Ellen Greenberg's parents, have sounded the way that they do today after a long-awaited breakthrough in the 14-year-old battle for justice in Ellen Greenberg's death. It arrived at a Philadelphia courtroom on Monday as her parents, Joshua and Sandee Greenberg, reached a settlement with the city that will result in an expedited review of their daughter's controversial suicide ruling. Now, that's good. That's great. What does this mean? What's going to happen? Could they go back and say, okay, we looked at it again. We still think the same thing we did before. Please go away. Yes, that could very well happen. But other things can happen too. And with all the attention and all the pressure that is on this case, and also, Mr. Governor here too is getting questioned about it at school meetings. There's extra focus these days, you could say, to maybe getting to the truth of what happened to Ellen Greenberg. They have fought tirelessly to prove that their daughter was murdered. They've agreed now to drop lawsuits against former Philadelphia chief medical examiner Sam Gulino and homicide detective John McNamee. The lawsuit alleges that the officials conspired to cover up evidence that Ellen was the victim of a homicide. The settlement also halts a separate case that was scheduled for arguments before the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in early 2025. That's a lot because that Supreme Court thing was supposed to be a pretty big deal. And the thing is, what they achieved today does exactly what they could have done with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. The only thing I don't like about that not going to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court now, if it does not, is that this could have changed, been a precedent-setting thing for other people in other cases who want to be able to challenge a coroner's ruling, and that's what the Supreme Court was going to hear, which could have changed the law in Pennsylvania. I don't know where that's all sitting right now, but from what we're understanding, this is taking care of their specific problem. This is a step forward in bringing in the people to justice who are responsible for the homicide, said Joe Podraza, the family's attorney. We'd like to find out who the murderer or murderers of Ellen are. This is a new statement for them.
It is.
Because in the past, it wasn't focusing on that at all. It was focusing strictly on this is not a suicide. You need to take a look at this as not a suicide. Now that we're getting there, but let's not count our chickens before they're hatched. There's a strategy going on here, I believe. And that's good. It's dad trying to get to the bottom of what happened to his daughter, and mom as well. The city of Philadelphia will pay an undisclosed sum to the Greenbergs in July, but monetary compensation was never the goal for Joshua Greenberg, saying there's no money in the world that can say Ellen committed. There's nobody in the world that can say Ellen committed suicide. And that's the most important thing, he said. I don't care about the money. I wanted Ellen's suicide taken care of. His confidence comes from a key development, the sworn admission from former Philadelphia pathologist Dr. Marlon Osborne, the man who initially performed Ellen's autopsy. Osborne originally ruled Ellen's death a homicide before changing it to suicide after discussions with Philadelphia homicide detectives and medical examiners. Now he admits he was, in fact, wrong, which is a big deal. That doesn't automatically go back, though, and change the ruling. That still has to be done, and that's where the expedited review of this that they achieved with those settlements and the court are going to start heading in that direction. They're starting to get some traction here. I'm happy for them.
I am too. This has been such a long road for them. Going back to that statement, and you pointed it out, where they said basically the murderer or murderers of Ellen. So now it feels like they are admitting that they think somebody else was involved in it, and maybe not in...
Well, they knew somebody was involved in it.
Well, absolutely. So there was the person who did the actual killing of her, And then I'm thinking what they're alluding to is the cover up portion of the game.
Yeah, I would think so. Who knows? I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna guess it was a one person job. But I think you end up being just as guilty and partly and very complicit in this if you were being a part of that cover up and preventing an
Yeah.
investigation from taking place. And I don't know, there's a lot of blame to go around there, but it looks like they're starting to take a much closer look at that. Here's what Joshua Greenberg, her father and mother, also had to say to Fox News Digital earlier
We have
today.
just returned from Philadelphia, where we had a remarkable 3 days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. But there's something else that's been bothering me. What did I think about my daughter's last moments before she died? And I was looking at the computer-generated death scene of a person who was stabbed. And there was all the wounds were superficial. The police changed their theory on homicide because they could not find defensive wounds. So let's start there. Ellen's wrists were both badly bruised, like she was being restrained. Number two, there were wounds to her neck consistent with strangulation. Number three, the two wounds that were in Ellen's back of her neck and in her chest, one of the medical examiners, before she was dismissed, said that those were post-mortem. We've been looking at the knife wounds. We should have looked at strangulation, eye petechiae, etc., looking at the layers of the muscle around the neck for bleeding. One of the things people must understand, we are dealing with a power that's greater than us. We're dealing with the city of Philadelphia and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. But we did get Osborne to say that he has re-evaluated his decision. It was incorrect. Why there should be another examination of Ellen by the city of Philadelphia is beyond me. What's going to happen there? We don't know. It could get just as ugly as it's been for 14 years, for another 14, or it could go our way, which would be undecided or homicide. Even the judges who turned us down in the higher court said that the examination by the district attorney, by the police, and the medical examiner was faulty. I wanted to focus on they're investigating a homicide and a cover-up.
In a legal document signed Saturday, Osborne outlined the evidence that led him to reconsider his stance. His reversal confirms what the Greenbergs' independent investigation had long suggested, that Ellen Greenberg was murdered. Yes, of course she was. Because there wasn't an invisible man that came from the sky and stabbed her. Someone did come into that apartment and stab her. And it wasn't her that did it. The Greenberg...
and bruising her own wrist and strangling herself.
Again,
Those
I
are
go back
things
to...
that you can't do.
Well, you also can't come back from the dead and stab yourself. So she wasn't a
there's that.
zombie. That's just all you have to do to answer this question of, was it a murder? Well, unless she became a zombie, yes, it was a murder.
I'm really struggling with Dr. Osborne here. There's part of this story of this pathologist that we don't know. And what we don't know is he's doing his job. He sees this body, does the autopsy, says, okay, this is a homicide. Here's the paperwork, hands it over to somebody. And then what happens?
Then the
Dr.
detectives and they all
Osborne-
have a huddle and they go back and they go, oh, no, you need to change that. He changes it because, the medical examiner should change it from people who are not medical examiners, their expertise. Of course, it's better.
Yeah, and that's what I want to know from Dr. Osborne is what happened? What happened between that time when her body was analyzed and the document was signed and then it was changed.
That's the
What went
million-dollar
down?
question. That's the
Isn't it, though?
Yeah. Greenberg's private investigator, retired Pennsylvania State Police Detective Tom Brennan, uncovered major inconsistencies in the case, including new witness statements disputing whether Ellen's fiancé, Sam Goldberg, actually forced entry into their apartment. Evidence suggesting Ellen's body was moved after she died, contradicting the crime scene's initial assessment, and a neuropathological evaluation confirming no hemorrhaging in a critical knife wound to Ellen's spinal cord, indicating she was already dead when the wound was inflicted. Despite these findings, the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office has not yet commented, or has not yet committed to changing Ellen's cause of death. Because I imagine there's somebody on the other line of that phone going, hey, don't do it. Don't do it. Like, don't do it. Don't do it. I think they might do it. I don't know. But I'm going to guess somebody's not going to be happy with this. And I don't know who. I do not know the answer to this. But somebody had some influence here. Who that is, that's for the law to find out. If they even can at this point. But clearly, somebody did this. This was a cover-up. Who are they covering up for? We don't know. Instead, they've agreed to conduct a new review. One of the Greenbergs hope will officially overturn the suicide ruling. Here's some more from Mr. Greenberg on Fox News Digital again earlier today, talking about the flawed investigation from the very start of this case. Let's take a look.
And somebody who may have been an abuser of women. Because that's what I think this all stems for. Ellen was confronting her abuser, and the abuser just didn't want Ellen to leave and come home and show those bruises to Sandee and I, and it got out of hand. He hit her on the head, that's what the gash is from, and then he strangled her. Suicides are the easiest way to cover up a homicide. So all those 20 stab wounds, even the deep ones to the back of the neck and the one in the chest, were part of a cover-up.
That's the claim from the father of Ellen Greenberg to Fox News Digital earlier. From the moment Ellen was found stabbed to death in her apartment on January 26, 2011, her case has been plagued with investigative failures. If you're just beginning to play along, Ellen's fiancé claimed he returned from the gym to find their apartment door locked from the inside. After allegedly forcing entry, he said he discovered Ellen's body slumped against the kitchen cabinets with a knife still lodged in her chest. During his 911 call, which I encourage everyone to go and listen to, it's online, it's on our shows. Just look for the Ellen Greenberg 911 call. Goldberg repeatedly insisted that Ellen had stabbed herself. If you listen to the call, it's as if he's discovering all of this as he's on the phone with them. Philadelphia police and the medical examiner's office quickly accepted that explanation, ruling her death a suicide, despite the glaring improbability of someone stabbing themselves 20 times, including wounds to the back of the head and neck. Perhaps the most egregious failure came when the detectives left the crime scene unsecured. Didn't look at it as a crime scene from the beginning. Someone that had been stabbed 20 times. The next day, the apartment was professionally cleaned before a proper forensic investigation could take place. You know, like you do. You call in a cleaning crew in the spot.
To me, that's the biggest thing right there. Like, I'm sorry. This is a crime fucking scene. Whether she killed herself or not, you need to do a thorough investigation before anybody comes in there with Clorox wipes and whatnot.
And this was like professional. This was like, this wasn't, Merry Maids coming in and doing this. This was like biohazard cleanup crew type shit that took care of this. So again, that seems insanely bizarre. Who called the cleanup crew and why? And why was that even allowed? I can't fathom how this all played out. Number one, where anyone thought it was a good idea to do that at that moment in time. And number two, that it was going to be allowed to be done legally, from a legal perspective of this is a crime scene. But again, if you don't consider it a crime scene, everything's legal. And if you think you want to clean up the scene, I guess you're welcome to do it, or have someone else do it. There's a lot of things in place that really seem bizarrely in place. I don't know why. That's the question.
Feels weird.
The error effectively destroyed potential evidence that could have pointed to a killer. There are mistakes that should have never happened in a homicide investigation, Brennan said. There is no statute of limitations on murder, and we will keep fighting. Oh, by the way, the knife was never printed and all that, too. So nobody, like, stab wounds. It's a suicide, of course. Don't print it. What else could it possibly be? Every time someone stabs themselves 20 times, or someone stabbed 20 times, it's a suicide.
Unreal.
Where? Where has that happened? With the lawsuit settled now, the Greenbergs' attorneys are now pushing for outside law enforcement agencies, such as the FBI or the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office, to take over the case. Please do. Please do, because clearly nothing's going to happen locally. Podraza made it clear that Philadelphia police would not be part of any future investigation, saying, frankly, from our vantage point, they were not very cooperative, he said. The question will be how receptive other law enforcement agencies will be to pursuing this. While a wrongful death lawsuit remains a possibility, Podraza said the family will wait to see if a criminal investigation moves forward before making any decisions. For Ellen's mother, Sandee, the settlement marks the end of years of sleepless nights and heartbreak, but not the end of their pursuit for justice. I hope today we made Ellen proud of us, because we certainly were very proud of her, she said. As for Brennan, who has spent years uncovering the truth behind Ellen's death, he remains hopeful that the killer will one day be brought to justice. We all have the time. We don't have the time in the world. There's no statute of limitations on homicide. Wouldn't it be nice to put your head on somebody's shoulder and say, hey, come with me? We'll see where all this ends up landing now, that they've gone this far with it.
What a slow journey this has been. 14 years. And no answers. 14 years of us banging our heads against the wall going, this isn't right. This case astounds me. There are so many astounding cases out there, but this one, instead of these people are not doing their job well, it feels like a cover-up.
Well,
I just don't think anybody in this field could actually look at this case and go, oh yeah, that was a suicide.
Not even in that field, just common sense, just being having a pulse and understanding zombies are on television. They don't come back. So you might as well have said that she was eaten by zombies or something. Yeah. I mean, it's just as accurate as saying that she stabbed herself and she came back. And because I know they're not directly saying she was a zombie and came back and stabbed herself. But by the ruling that they made, yes, you are. You are literally saying that.
Absolutely.
You're saying no one else did this. She did it herself. And the post-mortem stab wounds were also inflicted by her. You are saying she came back from the dead to stab herself. And by the way, also switched knives somewhere in the process, like you do when you're stabbing yourself to death.
Well, you reach into the drawer and go, damn it, I grabbed a serrated knife. I didn't mean to grab that.
It is baffling. Someone clearly did this. Who knows who that person is? Well, that person does. And I would wonder how that person feels right now. Seeing all this coming to light. Like, my God, whoever did this sure skipped away for a long time and probably thought, dodged that one. Oh, it's funny. It's funny how life changes and how things do come back to you.
If true crime is your obsession, we've got you covered. Press subscribe now to the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today for non-stop coverage, expert insights, and in-depth analysis.